Hello everyone, welcome to Winthrop and the World. I'm Paul Baskin, and with us today is Rachael Rollins. Rachael is running for Suffolk County DA. Rachael has been Suffolk County DA previously, running it for it again. Welcome to the show. Thank you for coming to Winthrop. I'm wondering, Rachael, if you maybe tell folks a little bit about yourself, why you're running for the office.
Sure. So I'm Rachael Rollins. I had the privilege of being the Suffolk County DA back in 2019 to 2022. Very proud of the things we accomplished back then. A little about myself. I am the oldest of 5 children. I am the mother of a 22-year-old. I'm also the guardian of 2 of my nieces due to siblings of mine that have some mental health and substance use disorders. I'm a licensed foster parent, and I'm on the hotline and emergency list for the Department of Children and Families, meaning my house is open just for 6 to 12 or maybe 24 hours when young people need a place to stay if their lives have been disrupted. So I'm a mom and an auntie, Rara is what my nieces call me. I'm a champion, I think, of the underdog. I am an advocate and running again because I believe the office needs to be more transparent. I have had the privilege of knowing how good this office could be, and I think mediocre isn't good enough.
Okay, and what do you mean by transparency? In what way?
Well, there have been some pretty public things that have happened with the DA's office. Remember, Suffolk County is Boston, Chelsea, Winthrop, and Revere. In Boston, we had an officer-involved shooting in March, and the body-worn camera was not released. Additionally, there were private invite-only meetings about the homicide that happened, or the manslaughter, I believe was the charge ultimately. And I believe any murder that happens, or death or homicide, where on a public street, the public has a right to know about what happened. We've seen, Paul, all of us, I think, watched a few months ago Memorial Drive in Cambridge, right? Where Tyler Brown, that was one of my cases when I was the DA of Suffolk County. He had a case out of Boston where I demanded that he get 10 to 12 years. A judge leniently gave him 4 or 5 years, and that's why he was out and able to do what he did on Memorial Drive. We know what happened on Memorial Drive because everyone had their phones out and were watching. So we need a body-worn camera policy with critical incidents. New York City has one, LA has one, Chicago has one, all of New Jersey has a policy. Boston needs to be leading in that space, and I've said that once I become the DA again, we're going to have a policy. I'll make sure I meet with the police and their unions and the community, and we work out what it is that I'm proposing, but there needs to be transparency with respect to what happens when something goes wrong, and that's not occurring right now in the office.
Okay, so yeah, the case of that March case of the Boston police officer, we definitely want to get into, but we can get right into it.
Sure.
Because I'm going to just be clear on a couple things. One, you said that there's a body-worn camera issue, but there's also an issue of the video being released. So that there is video in this case of a body-worn camera, is there not?
For sure. There are multiple body-worn cameras. We have Officer Nicholas O'Malley and his partner, I believe, each had a body-worn camera on. Stevenson King was the individual that had engaged in a violent carjacking, was not responding to direct orders from a law enforcement officer to turn his car off, put his hands out the window, stop moving the vehicle, and ultimately lost his life when Officer O'Malley discharged his weapon. The question is going to be, was that reasonable and justified? The body-worn camera is going to play a big part, but his attorney, that Nicholas O'Malley's criminal defense attorney, who, by the way, represented Karen Reed, it's David Yannetti, is going to be arguing that it's not everything. Body-worn camera is two-dimensional, right? But we don't even know what the body-worn camera is. I think Nicholas O'Malley's team doesn't want it released, but the Boston City Council, for example, and the community have asked for the body-worn camera footage to be released.
Okay, there's a lot there, but first of all, there is body
Yes, there is.
camera in this issue, because you were talking about there's a policy in Boston not to have them. Is that what
No. There is no policy in Boston,
Boston.
regarding release of body-worn cameras in a critical incident.
I see. And is the case in this shooting that footage will come out eventually, but it's multiple sides that are asking for it not to come out right now. Is
Well,
that
so the DA's office filed a motion in court to say we don't want to release it, and the defendant's attorney joined that motion.
right?
So the community and the Boston City Council are upset because the Boston City Council have said, we want to see the video, we think it should be released. Obviously, Paul, we would never release a murder, right, a death, but we could release up to that point. There's no policy whatsoever. So as in, the DA can do whatever they want in whatever circumstance. And that is not good, I think, generally speaking.
No, I hear that, but in this case, the DA is reflecting the desire of both parties in the case, right? Which is to not release it right now.
Right, which usually, correct. The DA on his own said, we don't want it released. He's arguing that it will taint the jury pool.
Right.
Paul, we are Boston. We've had the marathon bombing trial
Right.
that didn't taint the jury pool. Remember, back, April, 15th, 2023, all we saw over and over was that explosion.
Right.
And that trial didn't move, right? So there's a piece of it where if the marathon bombing video that we saw over and over and over again didn't taint the jury pool, why would releasing this body-worn camera footage and letting the community know what happened taint the jury pool?
Okay, but what's the counter argument of why is it so important for it to be out right now?
What-
Why not?
It's not my argument. It's the Boston City Council is making arguments that if there's a death on our streets, we should know what it is that happened. We should be able to see. In Chicago, in New York, in LA, and in New Jersey, it's 30 days, 45 days, 60 days. They're released, whether they're charging the individual with a crime or not.
So your part of your argument, key part of your argument is that body cam video will come out eventually. You're saying that it should come out quicker.
What I'm saying is I like the idea of having policies,
Yeah,
right?
okay.
Written policies. This DA
see.
does not have written policies, right? With this administration, when I became the DA in 2019, we released a 66-page memo. No, it did not have a body-worn, I'll concede, it did not have a body-worn camera in critical incidents policy. But anything that happened in the office, I think there are other things that people are critical of the current administration about. You have to be able to explain your decisions, right? Without flinching or without your voice cracking or with giving people the confidence they need that you actually understand what you're talking about. You can't hide and not speak about it. So let me just make sure I'm clear. I get it. Maybe the DA can't say what's happening in this incident with Officer O'Malley and Stevenson King.
Right.
But what he could say is, let me tell you what happens every time there's an officer-involved shooting in my administration.
Right.
There are 3 people who have between them tried 300 murder trials. They are the most qualified people in the office. I pull them off of every case. They go into a room. I'm making this up, but the community needs to know that you aren't winging it when somebody's killed by a police officer. There needs to be a policy, there needs to be protocols, there need to be things and proof that you've thought about this before it actually happened.
So, is it possible that the politics of this case have gotten out of hand on both sides? I mean, we have, here in town, our state representative has taken clearly sides in favor of the police officer in this case, donated to his cause, in fact. And does that...
Representative Turco.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does it feel like that the whole issue of a police officer shooting is just such a politically loaded thing, and we somehow need to handle it better?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think this has all of the ingredients potentially of being something bigger than either it is, or maybe being as bigger than what we think it is, right?
Yeah.
I'm not taking a position. What I'm saying is it's a white officer and a black defendant, right?
Yeah.
What we have is a black individual, or I said defendant. Had he lived, he would have been charged with multiple felonies. We know that, right?
Yes.
Now, the way our policies work is, you should hopefully live through an encounter with law enforcement and then go to the, judicial branch and have all the different, 3 prongs of our government working together, right, to decide what is happening with you, right? The legislative branch, it makes the laws, the executive branch enforces them. That's the prosecution and the police, and the judicial branch will ultimately rule on the law in your case. I think O'Malley, the police officer, has a very compelling argument, right? This is not a personal vendetta. He was on duty. It's not like it was off-duty conduct.
Right.
This is not a misdemeanor murder like we've seen a lot of back in 2020 with George Floyd and other people, right? No matter how you feel about that, this is a violent felony that was taking place, and multiple commands by Officer O'Malley were not followed. Now, whether he escalated too far, discharging his firearm as opposed to a taser or something in between that, we don't know. But what we do know is the Boston police lined that courtroom at his arraignment and all of his subsequent court dates. We have over $500,000 in a GoFundMe for him and other money being raised for his legal defense fund. I am not confident that there will be charges substantiated against him. It is likely he may be acquitted.
I see. And just to be clear, you got in this race as a result of that case? Is that fair to say?
No. That happened after I decided I was going to run, but I got involved in this race because after I left the DA's office to become the U.S. Attorney, President Biden nominated me, the U.S. Senate confirmed me.
Which is the federal prosecutor for
the chief federal prosecutor for our state.
The state, yes.
And the DA is the chief law enforcement officer for our county. So I've had 2 of the 3 highest prosecutorial jobs in any state. I have not been the Attorney General. So what happened was my phone just kept ringing from people in Suffolk County and elsewhere asking for help, right, with respect to their cases or getting responses back from their elected officials, their elected DAs. And even after I resigned as U.S. Attorney, my phone continued to ring about Suffolk County in particular, not being able to get returned calls. I think now, Paul, I'm running because we've seen a 15% increase in shooting victims year to date in Boston in particular. We've seen some very serious domestic violence happen, not only in Boston and Winthrop. Sadly, you had a domestic violence homicide. A husband killed his wife back in May. And, I want to make sure we're thinking proactively instead of reactively in the DA's office. And I think right now we're reacting to crime as opposed to disrupting and thinking creatively about how we're going to educate people about, domestic violence. For example, there's a sex offender registry. There's lots of talk potentially in survivor circles with domestic violence of having a domestic violence offender registry, right? Or things where people will be aware of people's behavior with respect to dating. We had a horrific murder of an 18-year-old girl in Boston. Her family believes by her partner, her ex-partner, Yoseliani is her name. And that's the type of reason why I'm running, is because I don't think we are proactively doing much in the office. We're reacting to violence.
Is this case, the Boston police officer shooting, an example of that, or is this something else?
No.
Okay,
well, I think it might be, Paul, because like I said to you before, that case happened in March. It is almost September. The DA has 300 employees and hasn't released a policy yet. He said after it happened, I'm going to have a policy for body-worn cameras. It's been 6 months almost, right? What are you waiting for?
So, the bigger issue of reactiveness, is there anything that the current district attorney, Kevin Hayden, has done to reverse anything that you had in place?
Sure.
What would that be? What would be some key?
I had a program called PUSH, the Project for Unsolved Suffolk Homicides, where we looked backwards, not at the homicides that are happening now. We have about 1,500 to date unsolved homicides in all of Suffolk County. The majority of those, Paul, are in Boston, dating back to the 1960s. My first year as DA, we had a 20-year low in homicides, and it has continued to go down. I'm very proud of that and proud of the work that the police have done and DAs, et cetera, in the community. if we have significantly less homicides but the same number of prosecutors, what are they doing, right? You know, are they looking at the unsolved homicides? There's no designated staff looking at 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago homicides. I was just out in Hyde Park recently, and then a gentleman came up to me and told me that his uncle, Edward Coyne, was murdered back, I believe, in 1975.
Okay.
His family has never gotten a call from the office. So yes, that would also include my 3 years as DA, but what we need is a designated group that's looking at this. I had that when I was the DA. We solved 3 homicides, 20-year-old, 30-year-old, and 40-year-old, and a few others under the current administration as a result of that work, but push isn't happening any longer. We'll bring it back.
So you're saying homicides during the current term of the current DA are down, and the DA should be using that extra staff to solve old work? Is
Right.
that the way to
When
think of
we
it?
got a 20-year low in homicides, Paul, I said that's amazing. Or when COVID happened, I said, what are we doing if the courts are closed? I want you to know also, as the DA, when COVID happened, and I was, we had the first grand jury up in the United States of America. We, Suffolk County, right?
Okay.
So we don't wait for people to give us permission or wait for the court to say when they're going to do, you know, when grand juries are going to open. Crime continued to happen during COVID, so I said, we're getting our grand jury up. The Suffolk Superior Courthouse, where all the Winthrop, you know, Superior Court cases, not the district court, but the Superior Court cases happen, the Suffolk County Courthouse shut down. I called the federal Moakley Courthouse and said, we need to use some of your courtrooms. We have trials that we have to do. So we started trying cases in the federal courthouse. That's the type of proactive work we need. This administration would sit back and wait for somebody to call them and tell them what to do. The DA is the chief law enforcement officer. So push is something we had that we aren't doing any longer. We had open discovery, Paul, meaning if a defendant believed that their trial was not constitutional or they were innocent, we wouldn't give them access to the files. We'd have somebody from the office sit there, but we would give them the documents that they were entitled to. How can it be that in my administration we have open discovery, the current administration has no open discovery, and the other candidates aren't interested in talking about whether they have that policy? We've undone tons of wrongful convictions. And what I would say to the people of Winthrop is, before there was Karen Reed, right, or Lindsay Clancy, there were lots of people in Boston that had, you know, wrongful convictions, right, or police misconduct in their trials. I think these 2 cases have shown that there can be mistakes that were made. There can be cracks in the system. There can be failures that we need to fix.
Okay. It's the 2 cases, Karen Reed and the current one about the mother.
The mother, right,
accused
who
of
has
killing her children.
postpartum depression, which is not in the DSM-5.
I see. Okay, I hear you. On the shootings, I understand there's a policy for every police officer involved shooting. Is that right? And there's a separate process for deciding what to do with it? Is that fair
So
to say?
every police department usually has their own. For example, in Boston, when an officer discharges his firearm, there's a fitted team that goes out from the Boston Police Department. They have their own policies.
I'm talking about the DA's office.
The DA's office, as of right now, that the current administration has said, I will have a body-worn camera policy for critical incidents, and we've seen nothing.
No, what I'm talking about is anytime a police officer shooting occurs, is there a process within the DA's office to decide what to do with it? It's like a special process just for that purpose?
I had one, yes.
one.
I don't know. Have you met with the current DA?
No, anyway, we're planning to. But the point I'm getting is...
Ask him, right? Like, my point is, Paul, you shouldn't have to, I shouldn't be answering these questions for you.
No, I'm trying to ask you how you handled it. Well,
Every time we had a discharge, I had a discharge integrity team. I had a group of a criminal defense attorney, a community member, a Mass State trooper for when the Boston police did it, and a Boston police officer for when the Mass State police did it. Winthrop had an officer-involved shooting with Nathan Allen, right? And so we presented that to Nathan Allen back in 2021, I believe, June 26th.
Nathan Allen is the person who killed the 2.
He murdered
Yeah, right.
Ramona Cooper and David Green.
Right.
and he discharged his, Nathan Allen killed those two people.
Right.
And then a Winthrop police officer
shot him.
discharged his firearm.
Yeah.
I said immediately, almost after that had happened, when we had done a very quick investigation, but we were going to present it, I first and foremost said that this was a hate crime because Nathan Allen killed the two black people in Winthrop. If I gave you $10,000 right now and said, go find two black people in Winthrop, I don't know if you could, right? This man stepped over several white people cowering there. This is what the Mass State Police told me.
I understand.
Said, I'm sorry to them for what happened when he crashed his truck, and then shot Ramona and David,
But
right?
I'm sorry, I'm trying to, what does this get to what you would do differently?
What I'm saying is that we had a discharge integrity team that we presented this case to
Right.
because a Winthrop police officer discharged his
Right,
weapon.
right.
Right? We don't know what the current DA has because there's no written policies in the DA's office.
I see. So you're saying in the shooting, you have a set policy for doing it, you're not clear what the current prosecutor is.
We had a discharge integrity team with a community member on the team. So and I stood up in front of the world and said, Nathan Allen murdered David Green and Ramona Cooper. His phone had racist and anti-Semitic information on it. It was a hate crime. The Mass State Police are looking into it. We issued press releases. I spoke to the community and answered questions. We don't have that information from the current DA.
So I understand you did have a policy when you were DA of, and correct me if I'm phrasing it incorrectly, but as I understood it was a policy of certain crimes you either dismissed or treated differently or let, whatever term, let go or whatever. I think it was let go, maybe some, I think the basic point was that there were some crimes, thefts, for instance, from stores that were so habitually mishandled that you let them go or something. Anyway, can you help tell people what it is I'm trying to say?
Sure.
And what it is you did and how that differs from what you see going on right now?
So first of all, again, Paul, it was a written policy. So people could be upset and point at it and say, I don't like what you're doing here. When there are no written policies, Paul,
Right.
if you get in trouble and you get Rachael as your prosecutor, I might do something totally different than the 17 other prosecutors.
Right.
I want everyone treated with the same policies,
Sure.
right?
Okay, I get that, yeah.
And what I said was, after looking at tons of data, these 15 categories of crimes we dismiss anyways in 3, 6, 9 months.
Right.
Why aren't we front loading the dismissal, the declination, or the diversion?
Got it.
Why are we wasting all of this money and time to just dismiss all of these cases in 6 or 9 months?
And what are these 15 cases, types of crimes generally involved?
This was generally trespassing. It was petty, petty, non-violent, non-serious crimes. This was 8 years ago.
Was retail theft part of that?
There was shoplifting under a certain amount, yes.
Right. And is that something that you understand that the current DA has gotten rid of and you would reinstate?
We have no idea, Paul, because he doesn't collect any data.
Would you reinstate it?
I don't believe that I would. I would have to look at the data to see what it shows. All of my policies were based on data. I
see.
brought professors in and individuals to cull through data,
Right.
analysts, to show when you prosecute people for these low-level crimes, do they come back into the system?
Right.
What happens? We looked at all of that data. Harvard University did, other entities, and showed that it does not reduce crime by prosecuting them. So that's why we implemented some of these policies.
So you might repeat that process of sort of analytically
I will
looking at,
100% look at the data.
but it might come up with a different list of 15.
100%,
Yeah, I get
or
it.
no list,
Yeah.
or no list, right? Like,
Yeah.
what we need to do is make sure that that's part of transparency,
Right.
right? No other job, Paul,
Right.
if anyone did it at Mass General and said, I don't know, we're doing a good job, aren't we?
Yeah.
You wouldn't say, like, that's amazing. I want to get my, my brain cancer done here. You'd want to look at data. You'd want to make sure that there was analytics being done.
Right.
There's no data being done at all in this office, aside from a 15% increase in shooting victims, which
Right.
the Boston police are telling us, and a 40% number of homicides in certain parts of Boston.
I think what somebody might say hearing that is that you're taking the role of the state legislature in deciding what crimes are legal and which are not. Is that a fair question to ask at least?
No, it's not that it's not legal. It's that they get dismissed anyways.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't we look? And my policies are written, so what I'd love is people to look at them. If Paul has never shoplifted before, you're going to be dismissed anyways.
Yeah.
Under Dan Conley, under Newman Flanagan, under Ralph Martin, under Kevin Hayden.
Right.
But if Rachel has done this 8 times, you're going to arraign. And by the way, the data shows that in my 3 years as DA, we prosecuted 25% of the cases on my list. So it can't be a decline to prosecute list, because if in 1 of 4 circumstances we prosecute, right?
Yeah. Does reasonableness, and what I think you're saying in so many words is reasonableness, does that differ? Does the equation differ in a case in Boston versus a case in Winthrop?
What do you mean reasonableness?
Well, like whether something is chronic. The whole reason that you're getting into these questions of maybe a certain crime should be dismissed because it has characteristics that don't make it worthy of being prosecuted. Does that sort of somehow make it? And again, if I'm using the exact words, help me out. But I mean, but is there something about whether the facts of the same exact thing happening in Boston versus in Winthrop?
Yeah, I mean, I want, Winthrop is not the same as Boston, neither is Chelsea or Revere. And so, you know, I think what I would want to do is make sure I was speaking to the chief of police here to see. So, for example, Winthrop and Revere don't have their own courthouses, right? So anything that happens in Winthrop, you go to East Boston. Anything in Revere goes to Chelsea. I'd want to make sure I was speaking to the chief of police and finding out what the issues were for Winthrop. There's domestic violence. There are other, you know, like quality of life crimes that are happening here. The list that I had before, I think why I won in 2018 with 42% of the vote with 4 other people and 80% of the vote against the Republican, right, is because I was the only person that had written policies, right?
But what I'm getting is there any difference that a prosecutor or DA would make in terms of handling a case that has maybe roughly the same set of facts that happens in Boston versus happening in Winthrop?
It wouldn't matter about whether it was Winthrop or Boston. It always matters about who the person is.
Who the person, okay.
So I wouldn't say, you know, if somebody with 8 other shopliftings in the last 5 months was from Winthrop or Boston, that wouldn't matter to me. It would matter who is this person and what is happening. I think the difference between me and a lot of other people, Paul, is it's very easy to prosecute people. What I want to know is if Paul keeps stealing from CVS, what's happening to Paul? Why? If you're on heroin or you're homeless, it's very easy to put you in jail, but it costs $60,000 a year for you to go to the Suffolk County House of Corrections. I'd rather get you treatment for your substance use disorder and housing. And I think the DA can push back on the mayor or the governor or the legislature to say these are bigger issues than just arresting people. We don't even need a DA if everyone's supposed to go to jail for everything. Why aren't we thinking creatively about who people are? And by the way, I will remind you, I am the DA that asked for 10 to 12 years for Tyler Brown on Memorial Drive. I'm the DA that's twice as much as a judge gave him, right? I'm the DA that said out loud, Nathan Allen is a bigot, right? He's a white supremacist who had a manifesto, right? And a lot of people weren't happy about that, but ultimately it was true, right? So there has to be somebody who is willing to look at data and whether likable or not is going to say, sure, we can put people in jail. It's going to cost you more money. If they come out and are more mentally ill, die of an overdose because they didn't get their, you know, Suboxone or methadone, and they are less employable, they're going to recidivate, and we're going to just keep seeing them in this system. If that's all you want for a DA, you shouldn't vote for me, you know?
We're running low on time, but I can't let it go without asking about the issues of alleged campaign violations. You've been accused of them. The incumbent has been. They include things like signature collection, improperly using the office to get people in the office to help out, that kind of thing, influence in some other races, that kind of behavior. I'm just wondering if you could address what it is you have to say on that question and what's happening.
For me, there were signatures collected for Chelsea that I read in a newspaper, and I was very surprised that I didn't get a call from the Secretary of State or the city of Chelsea. that I think originally it came out, Paul, that a Republican had allegedly signed. His vote wasn't counted, but ultimately, although I didn't collect those, my name is on all of those forms. So I take responsibility for anything with my name on it, right? I have called every single one of those city councilors in Chelsea myself to apologize. I have the endorsement of 2 of those city councilors, both of whom signed but did not sign twice. And I have said and am looking to see which of the volunteers that got this information, how did this happen, right?
Okay.
It does not appear that it could have been an accident. It looks as if it was intentionally done, but in my name, so I have to take responsibility for that. With respect to the current DA using DA staff to collect his signatures, it's my understanding the Attorney General of our state, the state auditor, and several other people do this all the time.
Yeah.
It was never a practice of mine.
Should it be banned? Should there be a flat rule against?
I think so. I don't see why, Paul, it's any different than if you work for me saying, like, do you want to go out to dinner with me? And you say, no, thank you. Like, it's inappropriate.
Right.
Why, if you have community support, use the community. I said when I was DA, I don't want your money, so don't donate to my campaign, and I don't need you to get my signatures. Do your job. Nobody should feel like they have to put up a sign of the current DA in order to keep their job. So,
and I think both of you, both the incumbent and you, have had some cases involving some involvement in other political campaigns, and sort of the question of your degree of influence into those.
Sure.
I'm sort of soft explaining it, but I mean, is there anything you could say generally about that, and whether the DA should at all be involved in anybody else's campaigns or business?
So DAs should absolutely be involved in other people's campaigns, right?
Okay.
So DAs are elected officials. All we do is endorse each other, right?
Okay.
What I think happened was we're not allowed to use our state office for our own political purposes. So the current DA used his head of communications to disparage his opponent back in 2022 and got a $5,000 state ethics fine. What I am accused of doing, Paul, is as the U.S. attorney, which is not elected, of getting involved in that same campaign and saying, we're going to investigate what is alleged to have happened in the state DA's race. 3 days after that election ended, I gave the Herald a document to say we're going to look into the allegations of wrongdoing by the current DA. That was inappropriate because the U.S. attorney is presidentially appointed. If I were the DA, I could have endorsed in that race. If I were but I couldn't use my state office. So it is complicated, right? The other candidate in this race, every one of the candidates in this race has had some BBO complaint or some...
BBO is what?
The Board of Bar Overseers. So all of the lawyers, everyone who's a lawyer has to get their license from the Board of Bar Overseers. You have to be a lawyer in good standing to run for DA.
Okay.
So that's the requirement. You have to be alive, a lawyer in good standing, you have to win the election, and you have to live in Suffolk County on the day you take office. Those are the only requirements to be DA.
Just very briefly, what we are out of time, but just should this office be an elected office, or would it be better if DA was an appointed office?
100% elected.
Okay.
Because the people, if it were appointed, there would be no diversity in the office. There'd be no representation. I think when we look at the criminal legal system, Paul, poor people are the most impacted, and I don't think poor people often are the ones that ascend to elected positions. So we need the people that are actually impacted by this office to be involved in making these decisions.
Terrific. Okay. Well, thank you, Rachael Rollins, former U.S. attorney, former Suffolk County District Attorney, and a candidate for Suffolk County District Attorney.
Correct.
Thank you for joining us today.
You bet.